I realized through a very intense psychedelic experience before I left my residency and started my own medical practice, I had this complete and total ego dissolution, complete realization of my entire existence, and then the complete collapse of all reality into a particle, and then the whole world went white. And it was very scary, but it was very exciting because I came back from that trip and I was like, okay, so we're all living lives for other people. I'm done. I'm going to live life for myself for a little while. And then, of course, you learn, because I was kind of living this, like, I'd been doing this sort of like going into medicine for, not because I wanted to be a doctor, but I also was trying to become a mainstream doctor because that's what everyone expected of me. But I wasn't happy in mainstream medicine. And I wanted to do things differently. And I wanted to work in wellness. And I wanted to work on health optimization. And I wanted to do my own thing. So I left mainstream medicine because of this journey of realization that, like, I can live a life that I can design. Now, I designed my own life. I lived a lot of lives. And then I realized there's a point where you're like, oh.
All right, welcome back to Nick Zai's Universe of Game. On this podcast, we explore all the different aspects of the game that we call the universe. And today, we had on Dr. Molly. Now, Dr. Molly is someone who has a lot of credentials. She's done a lot of things and plenty of that. But you know what I decided? We didn't even really talk about the things related to the stuff that she usually does. So this is a very unique podcast with Dr. Molly. If you've seen her before, this is going to be nothing like that, because a lot of these topics that we talk about today, she's never spoken about in public. So we just sent it. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Check the timestamps below if you want to check out any specific topic. Other than that, if you want to support the podcast, check out the links in the description. Without further ado, Dr. Molly.
So many podcasts out there that are just on the book and the course and the philosophy. So let's do stuff that, like, isn't on other podcasts.
Right. You're like reading my mind.
Yeah.
That was the next thing I was going to say. So let's get into, first off, something that I'm passionate about, and that is part of Universe Game. A lot of people will come on some people are in organized religion, some people are not, but I know that you're kind of big into I'm part of the spiritual, I have the spiritual connection, but it's not necessarily religious. And so
yeah,
I'd love to just kind of expand upon that concept for someone, because a lot of people are coming out of religion, like myself.
Sure.
I was raised Christian, and I realized that wasn't the answer after a while, and I've studied many different religions, and so I'm curious as to your perspective, you know?
Yeah, so I was raised Christian as well, and it was a huge part of my moral compass growing up. At the same time, I carried enormous shame around my sexuality because I found out in 5th grade that masturbation was a sin, and I was like, well, I've been doing this since kindergarten, so clearly I'm a sinner from birth. I'm a bad person, and I had a lot of shame around sex for most of my life. So as much as I really value the traditional values and the sort of moral compass that Christianity gave me, it also really fucked up my sense of self and my sexuality and created a lot of unnecessary shame that I really had to work very hard to get rid of. I also just had a hard time with this idea that, like, God is omnipotent and ever present and all knowing. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Cause, like, if God is everywhere all the time, all at once, then, like, there can't be a separation from him, which means hell can't exist. And, you know, because hell is supposed to be the separation from God. I'm like, that doesn't make sense either. So that's when I had a conversation with a friend and right before I went to college, and he kind of gave me this Epicurean, there's like this Epicurean paradox document you can look at. And it's like a flow chart of, like, understanding God. And it's like, basically it's really hard to believe in this benevolent God in the sky if also there's this idea that there's hell. And so I really just always felt that the whole hellfire and brimstone shit really bothered me. And I never felt comfortable being someone to indoctrinate people to Christianity. I always felt like this should be an individual's personal decision. I actually got kicked out of Landmark Forum because I was, like, really against they were trying to get people enrolled in this program, and it really triggered me because it brought me back to all those years of just being told that I need to bring people to this religion. And the funny thing about Mormonism is it's like the fastest growing religion for a reason, because, like, they make young people go and bring people to Mormonism, right? So, like, in some ways, the way that Christianity and Mormonism, a lot of religions function to bring people into these churches is because these are institutions, and they make a lot of money, it turns out. And you got to always follow the money when it comes to this stuff. And I just always felt a little bit like, if I'm going to tithe, why can't I just donate money to the causes that I care about? Why does it have to be the church? So I don't know. I in some ways, I don't know. I do think that we need spirituality in our lives, and we need spiritual gatherings, and we need to connect on a spiritual level with other people. And one of the benefits scientifically for religion and spirituality is that the more that people come together and participate in group activities, the healthier that they are. So human connection is fundamentally healthy. I just don't know if religiosity is fundamentally healthy, because there's a lot of abuse in the Catholic Church. There's a lot of, I mean, almost every church has abuse. Like, abuse is just common in human society.
Yeah.
And I have found that, like, if I can learn from different religions, different things, then why can't I just actually be a part of multiple religions? So, like, I love the goddesses of Hinduism, and I have like an altar with Vishnu and Lakshmi and like the Tridevi, and Ganesha. I love that aspect of Hinduism. I also love the sort of traditional values of Christianity, and like the value on family and community is really key. Also, Judaism is really big on family and community and ritual and shared experiences and shared rituals. And I just love that about Judaism. And I'm technically Jewish. I was raised Christian, which was an interesting discovery when I was in ninth grade. But then Buddhism has influenced me significantly because of meditation, and learning Vipassana style meditation was life changing for me. So, you know, just there's all these different belief systems, and they can really help you make sense of reality. But Taoism has been surprisingly influential recently in my life, because I felt like Taoism created this connection between spirituality and science for me that I never really had. And this concept of polarity is really fundamental to life. And Taoism really talks about polarity a lot. And so mitochondria are like one of my main scientific research interests. And mitochondria function through polarity and through energy flow. And basically chi and energy is a big piece of the puzzle of understanding health. And I'm always trying to find ways to make sense of the world. And when I discovered Taoism, I was like, because one of my friends gave me some books on Taoism, and I was like, okay, this is literally fitting my scientific brain and my spiritual brain together. And so, yeah, I think the key for most people is like, you need to find a community that's spiritually inclined if you want to like get the most out of your growth. Ideally, having a leader and somebody you can follow who can teach you things. I think everybody should have some spiritual guide. I have a great meditation teacher, and I certainly follow different spiritual leaders in the world. I think that spirituality should be practiced. I think there's a lot of value to practicing spirituality, and that religion, if it suits you, great. If it's harming you in some way, not so great. So like religion, I can kind of like give or take. I don't really need to go to church per se. But that being said, like I think that there's a lot of beauty in architecture in Catholic churches. So yeah, I guess that's a really long, drawn out answer about how I view science and spirituality and religion.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think the reason why at least Christianity wants you to be a part of only one is because there's a benefit to Christianity, and it's very savior oriented, and you know there's a lot of evidence that I've talked about. I've wrote about in my book that the Bible has been one of the most translated and changed wording books in existence. So it's tough to take it at face value for me.
Totally.
Once you understand that that's a thing. And that's not even my opinion. That was the scholars of that time who didn't get included in the translations. They would read the translations and be like, this is abominable at best, was his exact quote. And I'm like, oh shit. So that was one of the things that really started my questioning of it. And you know, then I started to look at how a lot of these other cultures kept it very, like even with Islam, they keep it very, throughout the ages, it's been very kept the same, and it's in the same language, and that's what I really respect about a lot of other religions. And unfortunately, it just seems like Christianity hasn't been that way, so it's hard to rely on. So that's what kind of started it for me. So that's really interesting that you also found Taoism to be helpful, because the concept of polarity is a very interesting one. It's what really helped me to understand that. Have you read the Kabbalion?
No. Should I?
Okay. Yeah. I think it's a good read.
Great.
It's one of the main books on Hermeticism. It makes it pretty easy to understand. And they have the seven hermetic principles, and they have the principle of polarity, and that really lines up with Taoism. They basically say the same thing, and it's hard for people to reconcile that one needs the other, because then you have the moral argument of wise or evil. And it's almost like to make the experience so that you could experience anything, because without any fundamental separation of at
Yeah.
least an illusion of separation, there'd be no experience. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
that's what we're doing.
I love that. And I'm definitely going to read that. And that's super helpful. And I also just want to add that, like, I think that a lot of people struggle with this idea that, like, can you be a Christian and also practice other religions? Like, I still consider myself fairly Christian. I still pray to Jesus. Like, no joke. Like, like Christ consciousness is epic. And I think if you can embody that consciousness, like, my name is Molly, which means Mary. My middle name is Christine. I've obviously been influenced by Christianity as a child. My name is literally based off of these, these biblical figures. But have you ever read the book Franny and Zoe by Salinger?
No.
Okay, another book that you should read. It's a masterpiece, and a lot of people don't know about it because they only knew about Catcher in the Rye. But it's one of the best books that's ever been written about just like about Christ consciousness, and like how this spiritual path is not always easy, and it's often a struggle to like live these values of love and unconditional love. Like, I literally am building a company around love, and I still find myself on the phone with like customer service agents getting frustrated and being kind of an asshole. And it's like I still am trying every day to try to embody unconditional love and love, and I'm human, and I'm not perfect, but we need to have templates of behavior to strive for. And I know a lot of really good Christian people in the world that really do exemplify the values of Christianity, and I know a lot of people who are all talk and hypocrites. And so I think the key is like, what is your value system? What are principles that you're going to live by? And how are you going to try to practice a form of spirituality that's going to help you grow in the direction of these higher values, these values that you're trying to like live up to? And I think religion and spirituality can offer that to you. That being said, I also think that sometimes you just have these experiences of consciousness expansion that blow everything you've ever thought about in spirituality out into, it just blows them all out of the water. Like some of these psychedelic experiences that I've had, some of the sexual experiences I've had, some of the experiences in nature that I've had. It's like when you have consciousness expansion experiences where you just feel totally at one with the universe, that can be just as impactful as studying a religious text, if not more. So I think more than anything, I'm a Gnostic, because I'm really a big believer in see for yourself and know for yourself. And when you can have direct experience with the divine, that's what really will stick with you. And that's what will, encourage you to continue practicing different forms of spirituality in order to try to remain in those higher states of consciousness. I have a lot of friends that I would consider definitely enlightened. I don't think I'm definitely enlightened yet, but I have friends that are. And one of the things that one of my friends, Ian Mitchell, said to me recently when I asked him, I'm like, what do you think? Like, do you think that like if I worked harder at the spiritual path, I would maybe be further along in my journey? And he's like, well, Molly, I'll be honest with you. I think if you just put like half the effort you put into your external world, into your internal world, you'd probably make some progress. And I think he was right. And I think that the thing is that anything that any intention that you have, anywhere your attention goes, and your attention and intention is directed at, it will grow. And so if most of your attention and intention is directed at external experiences and things and achievements, then you're going to get more of those. But if you direct some of your intention and attention to your spiritual growth, you will be surprised at what will enter your life and actually what's even possible for your reality, just from shifting where the energy is going.
So you said you're agnostic?
More like Gnostic with a G, like Gnostic.
Like Gnosticism?
Yeah, like Gnosticism. It's like they were really about direct experience. They were really about, like, there was a lot of Gnostic psychedelic use in the Christian church before it was banned. And the practices were to take psychedelic medicine as a sacrament. And this is in the book, The Immortality Code. Now, it could be wrong. It could be totally misinterpretation of the artifacts they found. But there's this belief that Christianity may have derived, and even Judaism, by the way. Like there's even texts in Judaism. There was a bunch of discussions at the MAPS conference last week of how religions were influenced by psychedelics and how psychedelics may have been a bigger part of religion in the ancient world, but got phased out while the rituals remained, right? So they would keep these rituals of incense and just like, you know, different like, for example, communion being just wine. It's possible that communion used to be a psychedelic brew. It's possible that communion was literally people communing together and drinking psychedelic brews together, the Kikion. And before modern and before before modern monotheistic religions, there were these primitive pagan polytheistic religions where nature was worshipped, where plants were worshipped, where female sexuality and sexuality was worshipped, where the stars in the sky were worshipped. And now, and a lot of that got lost in the development of these monotheistic belief systems. So I think that one of the reasons why I love Mia Magic and her content on Instagram and your content is this digging deeper into the history of human, you know, belief systems and realizing there may be actually more under the surface than we can see, and that we've been exposed to. And I think the goal would be to figure out like how can we reincorporate these aspects of nature and sexuality and the heavens into our lives. Like astrology and the comeback of astrology has been fascinating. I met a data scientist from San Francisco last week that is literally studying and creating a data science of astrology to build a next level app. And I was like, I love hearing this, right? I love hearing a technologist saying, this is a ancient belief system that we shouldn't just throw out, right? And you know, I actually really love astrology, and I find it to be really interesting and very informative, and also kind of funny because it's just like a lot of my challenges in life were like definitely reflected in my astrology, and so yeah, I think like the more that we can learn to have reverence for the natural world around us, the more we'll ideally stop damaging it so much. Ideally, start to live in harmony with it, and I think if we worshipped more than this man in the sky and we worshipped nature and we actually respected and revered nature as an extension of who we are, because literally I was in Puerto Rico and I was surrounded by like this massive rainforest and all these anthills, and I was just like, oh my God, I am literally nature. And I was, you know, it might have been the day after a journey I was on, but I was surrounded by nature, and I was just like, I felt this deep sense of being held by the earth. And I was like, oh my God, if only people could feel this way on a regular basis, we wouldn't be literally like destroying the earth on a regular basis. Like I think we're so disconnected from nature. And I think that when Christianity is also always taught that like there's the worldly way of life, and then there's this like life that's like beyond the world. And like you're always living for this life beyond the world. But what about the life here right now? Like that is such a, I find that so many people are not living for the moment of existence now and for the world that we're leaving our children. And I think if we had more reverence for the natural cycles of life, like a lot of my friends that are hippies celebrate the solstices, you know, and they celebrate the seasonal changes, and they celebrate, I mean, I create new moon and full moon intentions every month. And I really use natural cycles of the moon to like plan my life. I mean, I literally like create manifestation plans based on, you know, the cycles of the moon. And I follow my astrology every month. And I have found that like, it's been really helpful for me to be able to bring in the things that I want into my life more so than just praying. So a lot of like the sort of spiritual ritualistic activities that would be maybe considered witchy that I've been taught by my friends who were witches have been extraordinarily powerful tools for creating reality that I want to live in.
So how do you as a doctor get past all the shit talking that all the other doctors do about
It's funny.
some of the shit that you do?
I had this call with this guy a few days ago, and he's a remarkable person. And I was asking him the same question. I was like, how do you reconcile this obsessive, like literally this guy's a genius in deep tech research and investing. And I'm like, how do you balance the deep tech side of your brain, the scientific hardcore side of your brain, with the spiritual side of your brain. And he just said, when you just realize it's all one. And I was like, oh my God, is that really the answer every time? Like there is no separation of the science and spiritual. And I'm like, I think that that's the way you got to approach this stuff, is like, with the more that I can see divinity in science, the more that, I mean, like, things come to scientists all the time that they cannot explain through just the scientific method. Like insights and epiphanies and concepts can literally drop on your head in the middle of an experiment that you never would have guessed. Some of the biggest and best scientific discoveries have come from literal consciousness expansion experiences. There's a great paper on how altered states of consciousness can be used for creativity and scientific pursuits. And
What is that called?
Yeah, let me find it.
Do you know the name?
Science
I'm just curious because I kind of want to pull that up.
altered states of consciousness.
If you don't have it, that's fine.
Creativity. No, I can't remember paper names. It's let's see here. I think this is it. I think this might be it. Hold on. I think this is it, but you might have to get it through your institution. Let me see here. Psychedelics. I really love looking at medical literature for woo-woo shit. Oh yeah.
I'm gonna need to do that.
Psychedelics as potential catalysts of scientific creativity and insight.
That's the name. Okay.
It's a great paper. And what it talks about is not just psychedelics, but it also goes into dream states, hypnagogic states, psychedelic states, and how these are conducive in supporting some aspects of scientific creativity. And the way that I think about this personally is anything you can do to get your brain to drop into the delta waves of altered states. Like it's not alpha or beta or gamma. It's like, I think the delta waves of your brain is like the segue into the subconscious. So I've purposefully been meditating with New Calm, and using it's theta, the theta states, not delta, it's theta. So that the theta brainwaves they claim are like the dream state, right? And so I spend a lot of time when I go to bed at night, in the morning when I wake up, in those 5 minutes before I fall asleep, I'm trying to program my subconscious. I'm trying to program my dreams. I'm trying to program my manifestation capacity. I'm currently taking a break from psychedelics because I've already gotten the message and I'm hanging up the phone for a while because I've just gotten so much value out of them. And I think I've hit like a threshold of like no longer needing them. But psychedelics are things that I have used in the past for exploring my reality and trying to think of new ideas and come up with new solutions. It's very common in Silicon Valley. There's actually an article in the Wall Street Journal about psychedelics in Silicon Valley and performance. And I was interviewed in the Financial Times in 2017 about this phenomenon. So I do think that there is some utility for them. Some people microdose for this reason. We don't really know the long-term safety profile of microdosing. There could be effects on heart health. We need longer studies. So before you go off and use psychedelics, like focus first on dream states, meditative states, hypnagogic states. Trance states are really powerful. Like hypnosis and internal family systems, a really good internal family systems practitioner can literally drop you into a hypnotic state, and you can literally like work on your subconscious and work on subconscious programming. So like, to me, if you want to change your brain, you have to learn to work on your theta brain waves, and you have to get there through these different paths. There's sometimes I'll even combine things. I'll use like the PEMF mat by Higher Dose combined with the New Calm, and then I'll just go into meditation. And I actually had an EEG scan last week. And the funny thing is that when I was meditating, they were like, your brain went completely low power and you went completely into theta. And I was like, yes, all the theta meditations I've been doing are working. You can see it measurably. But now nice. I'm like trying to optimize for my conscious, and now I'm going to start using New Calm to like optimize my brain for like more focused attention. I really love the company. I think it's so cool when you can find technologies that can amplify spiritual practices. And I think this sort of like world of brain optimization is so nascent. Like I've been optimizing metabolism for 10 years. The next move is about optimizing your mental fitness and optimizing your sexual fitness. And I think that like physical fitness, metabolic health, we've figured out sleep, physical fitness, metabolic health. I think we figured these out. If you still suffer from sleep issues, you probably aren't processing your emotions, and you probably have sleep apnea, and you probably need to get some like you probably should like look into those two things, and also just sleep habits. Many people have just terrible sleep habits with substances, with screens. But sleep is you can figure out sleep. You can figure out fitness. You can figure out nutrition. These things have been figured out. Mental fitness training, sexual fitness training, like working on your spiritual, your subtle body building. It's not just building your physical body, it's building your energetic body. Like, this is, to me, the coolest stuff about optimizing your performance in life and optimizing your spirituality. It's like when you can actually learn to be in conscious control of your brain, then you have real power, because now you can be, people can't fuck with you. And like, somebody tried to recently rile me up, and I was so impressed that I was able to just pause and calmly diffuse the situation, when like in the past I would have completely thrown gasoline on that fire. And I just diffused it. And that's a complete testament to like inner work that I'm continuing to do. And so that's how I reconcile a lot of this, is like, I never pulled psycho-spiritual pursuits into my medical practice until like the last 4 years. And it was really a consequence of the pandemic and seeing a lot of people have existential crises and not know how to handle them, and realizing that optimizing biological markers wasn't enough. So I developed a ketamine-assisted therapy protocol, and I really was working with psychedelic medicine in the midst of real major societal changes. And this work on human connection and this work on understanding the science of love made me realize that like there's a way to unite science and spirituality and integrate it into my medical practice so that my patients can get better outcomes. And inevitably, if I address a person's spirituality, a person's trauma history, a person's relationships, and I help them see the connection of their dis-ease to their disease, they're going to get better outcomes, because they're going to have more awareness that they actually have a say in how their body reacts to their conditions of their life.
All right, so me and this paid actor, The River here, had to interrupt this podcast to inform you of today's sponsor, and that is the Patreon that is called Universe the Game, which is an advanced Patreon. This ain't your average basic bitch Patreon. No, this is, we're doing something every week. Right, so this month, we're already 1 week in. We did the Astral Workshop the first week, and the next live workshop coming up is about the Tree of Life in mysticism. And then beyond that, we have the book club. We're reading Holographic Universe in that book club. And we've also got a live Q&A where you can ask me any questions that your heart desires. So if you want to join the Patreon, it really helps to support the podcast and keep it ad-free. Check out the link in the description. Otherwise, let's get back into the episode.
Okay, so this is actually a pursuit of mine that I've had for a while, because I started off very logical, and then I've had my own spiritual-esque experiences, and it made me actually the opposite of logical. And then I feel like I've reached a nice subtle neutrality, kind of using both sides of the brain. And so this is actually a passion project of mine, is trying to unite science and spirituality. So if you could give the world a message about just how, like, if I just straight up asked you the question, how do you unite science and spirituality? How do you really think you do that?
It's physics at the end of the day. It's always physics.
Hmm.
So here's what I want to do. If I had unlimited money to pay all the physicists in the world to get into a room with all of these spiritual leaders and actually make them all get together and really sit down and ask, what's some fundamental truth that we can, that is irrevocable truth of the nature of existence. I bet if we sat with enough people in a room, we would, and actually maybe with some AI, we could synthesize a coherent theory of theory of everything. And I think that the thing that I'm waiting for is like people to collaborate on this theory of everything. Because my friends that have theories of everything, one time, okay, it's a fun story. I had Eric Weinstein and Garrick Lisi in Maui. And it was like maybe 8 years ago. And I'm like, oh, you guys both have physics theories of everything. Can you guys tell me your theories and present them to me? Because I want to learn. And they're like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, you're going to do it. And they're like, okay, fine. So they both presented their theories. And then they didn't speak for years after this. And then they eventually became friends again. But like, I find that there's a lot of people in the world that have their own belief systems, but it's like, we're not going to make progress unless we all are questioning our beliefs and we're all collaborating to come up with new solutions. And I think the thing that I'm challenged by with a lot of these theories of everything is that they're actually quite difficult to teach to a layman. And one of my friends, Mike Devine, is this software developer, physicist, and lives and like perfumer who lives in Alameda. And he showed me like a summary of his theory of everything. And I was like, oh my God, dude, this could be it. Like, this is a really good idea. Like, you need to synthesize this and you need to present this to the world. This is too good. Because it was a really interesting way of combining gravity and quantum physics that made them both make sense scientifically, and also to me made sense according to some of the sort of spiritual ways that I see the world. So I think that there is, if there's a Venn diagram of Taoism, of the biology of like literally energy flow through the body, like the mitochondrial health, how mitochondria function, and this sort of every mitochondria is basically sensing, integrating information, and it's also producing energy. So energy, information flow, and structure is literally the nature of life. So if you understand that mitochondria are basically producing energy, the sensing and integrating chemical messages and electromagnetic messages in the cells, and then also directing the nucleus to produce matter, you realize that like they are the seat of life. And so I think that there's so many people who just live in their silos, and that like physicists don't talk to biologists and biologists don't talk to, spiritual leaders. But we got to get the mitochondrial researchers in a room with the physicists, in a room with the Taoists. And I think that if we can get them all together, and maybe even some Buddhists if we want, I don't know, we need to get everybody together and we need to figure out where is the common themes of these belief systems. And I mean, man, this would be the coolest conference. Let's get real. It would be like the nature of existence,
Why are you talking shit about Buddhism, huh?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not talking shit. I mean, maybe a few Buddhists.
Maybe. What the fuck? Hey, I mean, everybody has preferences. That's fine. I actually really enjoy Buddhism, for all my Buddhists out there.
I love Buddhism. I mean, it's life changing for me. Also, I'm building my own mandala. I'm like literally. I didn't even realize that Buddhist scholars did this. I just felt inclined to build a mandala. I was like, oh, that seems like a fun art project. And then I was like, wait, people do this as a spiritual pursuit? Cool. So then I started studying mandalas, and I was like, wait, I can design this to be whatever I want. And I was like, who are the gods and goddesses that are sitting on each other's laps and like kind of making love? Like, cause that's going to go in the middle. And then it's going to be surrounded by like nature, and it's going to be surrounded by energy, and then colors and shapes and gold leaf. And it's going to be beautiful. And I'm really excited to like put mythologies of my life into this mandala. So like, I love taking inspiration from different religions and different spiritual practices and making it my own.
Yeah, I mean, there are also some scientists of the past, some quantum physicists who did actually study Eastern philosophy, and I think there's been a lot of progress with some of those. They're a little bit older now, but
Yeah.
I've talked about some of those quantum physicists, and I think at the end of the day, people just get too lost in one lane.
Yeah.
I think this is the way, when it seems like the way is to understand all the different ways, because there's wisdom in at least taking a look at this and seeing how they say it. And I think it's all trying to describe the same phenomena.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I don't know, have you studied black holes at all?
I have a bit, yeah.
Okay, so like, I think they're the coolest. The fact that there's a black hole in the middle of our galaxy is just amazing. But I was
Why?
researching black holes. I just think that they're just so confusing and fascinating to think about, to think about like just the collapse of all life into blackness and like what's beyond
Well, there's another
it.
dimension in there.
Like,
Didn't you see
is there
Interstellar?
a wormhole? Like, do they always have wormholes, or sometimes are they just pits of darkness? Like, they're apparently mass, charge, and sometimes momentum. So, but like mass and charge is so interesting to me, because it's like like mass is, we have mass and we have charge, but we also have flow of information. And so like this idea that like black holes are like close to life, but not quite there, because there's like, they just suck everything in and there's like, it's all collapses into nothingness. It's like, why? Like, why? Like, why does this happen? Like, I'm so curious, like why these things exist and like why the universe, like how these things are just out there. And are we going to be swallowed up by one day? I don't know.
It's
You know,
interesting.
who knows?
You actually made me think of. Have you ever heard of Itzhak Bentov?
No.
No. Okay, so I'm gonna do a video on him soon. So
Oh, yeah?
by the time this podcast comes out, you might actually have already seen that video. But I'm actually gonna try and see if I can screen share this with you right now.
Oh my gosh.
Because I have his research. You know, it's kind of funny that people don't understand that this is a thing, but
What is it?
So you know how there was the gateway stuff and all that.
Oh yeah. One of my investors told me to watch it, and I found I couldn't get past like the first half.
Well, the gateway kind of took Itzhak's work and then didn't credit him, and everybody thinks the CIA came up with the gateway experience. But
Oh
no,
wait, is the gateway? Sorry, I'm thinking of something else. Is the gateway?
it's a Monroe Institute stuff.
Yeah. That was like, there was an article written about it recently in the news, and it was like CIA technology for like, what does it do again? It's like telepathy or something. I don't know.
Well, no, it basically what it is the CIA studied the Monroe Institute. And
Yeah.
then people are saying the CIA had this technology. It's like, no, they just went there and documented what they were doing.
As they
And so
would.
at the Monroe Institute, they essentially had a certain frequencies that could get you to go out of body. And that was like the point. And so part of in that, I'm going to show you this because we're talking about black holes, and I'll add this in on the replay too. Can you see this little thing?
Cool.
So you're talking about what's on the other side of a black hole. According to him, you can see here how matter kind of flows through, and then it actually time ends in a black hole, and then it begins. There's a white hole on another side of a black hole.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
And so he sees it as a cosmic egg, and that the cosmic egg has to kind of shatter in the middle, and then the middle is like what creates the torus field.
Oh my God,
Which
this
one?
is pure, like, this is like polarity too, you know?
That's how he describes it as well, is that there's a masculine and a feminine side of the universe.
Wow.
So I'm going to do a video on this, but I just wanted to show you because we're talking about black holes. It's like,
I mean,
what's
also,
on the
it's
other
like,
side?
it's kind of like what electromagnetism looks like too, which is so crazy.
Exactly.
I
so-
love this shit. I love finding patterns and multiple levels of existence. And I just feel like we are, because we have AI, we're either going to completely destroy humanity or we're going to solve all of our problems. And it's like, it's like,
Those are extremes.
literally, it's either
No
way,
middle.
and either way is going to be super interesting. So, you know, I work with a bunch
show.
of people who work in AI, and I genuinely believe that like the majority of people that are out there who are working on it are like really good people who really want to make the world a better place. And they're genuinely trying to make the world a better place. But there are bad actors in the world, you know, and I think there's definitely evil in the world. And I think those people out there, often think that they're doing the right thing. They often think that, I apologize, there's actually a leaf blower. Should be done in 1 second. Hold on.
You're good. I mean, you're talking about Thanos.
What?
It's not that bad. The leaf
Who?
blower's not that bad. You're
Who?
good. Thanos. You're talking about the Thanos archetype, you know, in Avengers, the guy who thinks he's saving the universe by
yeah,
killing
yeah.
half the people.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I
I
agree.
think that's literally like President Xi of China. Like, I think he definitely
Oh
thinks,
shit!
I think he definitely. Oh yeah, we're gonna get banned. Oh shit, are we gonna get banned? Are we banned?
No!
Are we following?
You're
Can
gonna
you hear
find me.
us? Can you hear us?
Absolutely. They're already present.
We're not on TikTok, are we? We're not putting this on TikTok. As long as we're not putting this on TikTok, I think we're okay.
Anyways.
That guy's some real power. I mean, let's just talk about real power. I mean, that guy is controlling billions of people. That's wild shit. You know?
Yeah, I mean, many people are still getting controlled in the U.S. It's just through capitalism and just tracking your sales data and shit like that. They try to make money off you.
The things
Yeah.
that pop up on my phone and computer that I did not say out loud The fact that it's like reading my
Oh my
thoughts
God.
now is like beyond I'm like, how the heck did you know that? You know?
You know, that reminds me of Star Wars, the 7, 8, 9, the trilogy that everybody hates. There was a really interesting scene though. Did you see that? Did you see all those Star Wars movies? Okay, so I know people don't like Kylo Ren, so there's gonna be people that talk shit, but well, actually, he was a decent kid. The whole thing, but there was a scene where he knows that the Sith is basically tracking his mind, so he has to like hide his own thoughts within his own mind, and he
Oh
figures out
my
a
God.
way. The guy's reading his mind, but he still hid his true intentions, and it's like that's almost how I feel. It's like if I. It's like if you directly think about, oh shit, you know what? I kind of feel like I want to get an inflatable spa, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh shit, Amazon pops it right up. It's like, fuck, shit, relax, you know.
I
But
mean, who knows how it's working, but there's a pretty good Black Mirror episode about this stuff. You know, did you see the most recent Black Mirror?
I did watch the one episode a couple
first
nights
one?
ago of the Breaking Bad guy, and it was actually really good.
Oh, that
That's the
one was
only one I've
great.
seen.
That one's super sad though. The first one, I won't give it away to your audience, but basically like AI is making hyper realistic Netflix shows based on people's real lives that are happening like in real time, and it destroys this woman's life. And it's just like we definitely don't know how weird things are gonna get, but I'll tell you what I'm gonna do is I am preparing for the worst. Like I
You're a
think that
doomer.
I'm not a doomer. I'm just I just have an intense sense of things are gonna get weird in the next 3 to 5 years, and I'm actually ready for it. Like I'm like if I'm gonna like bring I'm gonna bring main character energy to like the weirdness that's coming. Okay, like you kind of
Nice.
have to, because like life is this like more and more and more. My life is like a movie. Like I'm not even joking. I feel like I'm Dolores in Westworld sometimes, where I will write a scene and then it will just start to happen and I'm like, you gotta be kidding, like is this really happening? And it does. And so whenever I travel, I plan my clothes as though it's different, like it's different scenes of a movie, so it's like actually really fun. I kind of like look at my life as kind of like, it's funny, the universe game is the name of this podcast, but like there's a great book called Finite and Infinite Games, and I'm really trying to like live an existence that is this infinite game, you know, that is this really cool, fun, fascinating story. And I don't know anybody in the world with a life like mine. I'm extremely I'm very neuroatypical, and I'm also very bold, and I'm very risk taking. I take a lot of risks, and so I've carved a very unique storyline for my life, and it's been a fucking blast. Like I think I've lived more in the last 10 years than people will live their entire lives. And I'm not trying to brag. I'm just like, I don't think most people know that that's possible. Like when I realized through a very intense psychedelic experience before I left my residency and started my own medical practice, I had this complete and total ego dissolution, complete realization of my entire existence, and then the complete collapse of all reality into a particle, and then the whole world went white. And it was very scary, but it was very exciting because I came back from that trip and I was like, okay, so we're all living lives for other people. I'm done. I'm going to live life for myself for a little while. And then, of course, you learn, because I was kind of living this like I'd been doing this sort of like going into medicine for not because I wanted to be a doctor, but I also was trying to become a mainstream doctor because that's what everyone expected of me. But I wasn't happy in mainstream medicine, and I wanted to do things differently, and I wanted to work in wellness, and I wanted to work on health optimization, and I wanted to do my own thing. So I left mainstream medicine because of this journey of realization that like I can live a life that I can design. Now, I designed my own life. I lived a lot of lives. And then I realized there's a point where you're like, oh, life is about service. Like real true purpose comes from service. So as I've like gone on that first hero's journey, the second hero's journey that I'm on is really about how am I going to give back and how am I going to commit my life to others and commit my life to as much service as possible. But I couldn't have gotten there if I hadn't have left the mainstream path. Like I actually look at most doctors' lives as service. Don't get me wrong. This is an incredible service. I just wasn't cut out for hospitals. Like I was incredibly sensitive, and I could literally, like, if I see someone in pain, I can actually feel pain in my body, like physically, like it pulls. It's like a pull in my abdomen. So that was also the challenge of feeling so much and being super empathetic. You really have to turn that muscle off if you're going to be a mainstream doctor. And I just couldn't do it. I found it really, really hard to turn off the switch of feeling it all. Um, and I probably could have practiced it better, but it was just really hard to see. I also worked in pediatrics, and a bunch of my patients would die, and I would find out after being on nights for 2 weeks, and it would just be devastating. And so medicine, I mean, my heart goes out to all the doctors listening, because it's so hard to be a mainstream doctor. The medical system is just so hard on physicians. I mean, people have no idea how hard it is to become a doctor, and how much it tears you apart, and how so many doctors have PTSD. And it's just, I mean, let alone like what happened with the pandemic, which created enormous PTSD on top of an already traumatizing residency experience most people will have. So we have to have so much empathy for physicians, and recognize that they're doing really, really good work in the world, and they're doing their best. But the system is really challenging to work in. And so I just decided I was going to build my own way of practicing medicine, and focus on optimizing health and measuring health and teaching it. Taught it at Stanford, wrote a book about it, and I'm really quite happy with where things are going. But that being said, I do think that the world is in a perilous condition with the environment, and I think that we're we're in a cold war with China and Russia, and a hot war. We're basically involved in a hot war with being on the side of Ukraine and Russia. So things are really dicey right now. And I think that the most important thing that I'm preaching to the world is you have to get your communities strong, and you got to unite with people that you care about, and you got to protect your loved ones, and you have to create the conditions where you can survive a apocalyptic scenario, because the world could get really crazy. And if it does, you got to be prepared for that. And the best way to prepare for that is to like surround yourself with people that you trust and you love, and gather resources and pool resources, and create the conditions of thriving in the midst of adversity.
Yeah, that's it, right? I mean, it's kind of like moving from this large disconnectedness that we all feel,
Yeah.
to maybe sizing it down to actual grounded communication with people in the physical, and
Yeah.
kind of creating communities versus like this collective mass mind of just numbing ourselves on social media. It's like, well, let's just actually let's get some sovereignty. Let's get some individuality, in the sense that this is how we want to live our life, versus we're going to live this way because this is what society says we should live. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
I kind of got into this, but this ain't for me, Chief. I was going to be a physical therapist, and I went to an internship for it. I was going for kinesiology, and then
Yeah.
I was considering doing physical therapy, and I saw it, and the story goes that I realized that they were just seeing the same patients over and over, and they
Yeah.
were just like, do these exercises and you'll kind of get better, but I'll see you in a month when you hurt yourself again and you return.
Exactly.
And it's like, damn, do we have a better system than this? And so that's kind of what started me, is kind of seeing how the mainstream physical therapy was kind of messed up. The physical therapist didn't really care that these people weren't actually getting better because they were getting paid. And it's like, well,
That's it.
how do we find morals? And we don't necessarily need a religion to find morals, because there's a connection beyond religion. And I think that's sometimes hard for people, because it's so pushed, but then we don't want to be anti-religion, because I think religion has its benefits. Like you were saying, I would word it as if, like, if you have morals, then you're probably not going to off other people. But so if we look at Christianity and it says, don't kill other people, and you're scared of God, okay, well, that kind of helps society. But then there's parts that don't help society, that are based in falsehood. So it's like there's levels to it. And I think as we advance, we kind of will naturally start to feel into what's true and what's not. And I think that there's a push to get people out of religion so that they disconnect, but I think that there's also a way where we can just realize that the connection is within us. And you're still seeking a spiritual connection. You're not completely going against it and becoming atheist. That is a path for some people. Some of the people that I look up to have been atheists. And so everybody's on their own path. So it's hard to tell, what's right for someone else,
Yeah.
so that's been a
I
thing
think
too.
atheism requires just as much faith as God is Christianity. Like you have to really believe in your idea that there's no God. And I don't know. I mean, I I do know some. I do know a 5-MeO DMT shaman who's an atheist, which is surprising.
Wait,
Yeah.
I feel like most of the time it's if you do that, you're not an
That's the
atheist
thing.
anymore.
Most of the time, you're not an atheist anymore, but sometimes you just see he's a really interesting character, legendary human, and yeah, I mean, like I think again, it's like you have to create your own template of reality, and the key is you have to be curious and you have to be motivated enough to seek knowledge and answers. And also, the spiritual path is not for sissies. It's Jedi training. If you really want to be in the spiritual path, you have to accept that it's not going to be easy every day. It's not this like rainbows and sunshine, like happy go lucky vibe. Like, there's a great book called, what is it called? Buddha Takes No Prisoners. And it's this book that I read like twice when I was on these meditation retreats, when I was going through a lot of changes spiritually. And I was just like, I needed a guidebook to give me a path to like, please tell me this is going to get easier. Because, like, the thing is, you think when you have a spiritual awakening that your whole life's going to be, like, blissed out and happy. And it's not always that case, especially if you have a lot of shadow work to do that maybe you haven't done before. Some people get really lucky and they just become enlightened and then they just, like, are happy all the time and they're fundamentally well and they do exist. Sometimes you get kicked in the face with a spiritual awakening, as in my case, and then God has given you a path of, like, real challenges in order to really be ready to step into your power to guide and lead people in a direction of greater health and connection to source. And I've had a lot of ups and downs in the last few years of this spiritual growth process. And I'm not proud of everything that I've done or said. There's certainly things that I've certainly made mistakes. And I'm just like, but I also find that like it's not always a linear path. The spiritual path sometimes is two steps forward and one step back, and that's okay as well. But the key is you have to be willing to take feedback and criticism, and you have to be willing to accept that there's parts of yourself that need to be loved and that maybe are still hurting and that need to be reparented in some way. So there's just so much that we can do to improve ourselves through spiritual progress and through personal development. And, I would argue that, not everybody needs to do nearly as much as I've done per se, but I do think that the work is really not just these peak experiences of psychedelic journeys. It's like, what are you practicing every day to become a better person? And then how is that reflecting in your relationships? And is your life becoming more harmonious or more chaotic? And if your life is becoming more chaotic, that's an internal reflection of your inner experience that needs to be looked at. And so I love The Law of Attraction, by the way. Like, it's one of my favorite books because it's basically like, look, your internal reality is your external reality. So get your internal world balanced, centered, grounded, harmonious, and then the external world will shift as well. But that's the path. That's the work, and that's the practice, the practice of every day waking up. And even if you feel like shit, you have to get your mind in the right place. You have to do the things that you need to do to get your brain into balance.
Okay, so you said God. Now I need to ask, as someone who's not religious, that word is used in religion most of the time. So
God, source,
well, tell me, what does
infinite
God mean to you?
intelligence. I don't know. Like, there's this field of pure infinite intelligence and beauty underneath everything, that which life emerges and that we can tap into. And, I think, to me, it's just this like, how do I describe it? How do you describe the ineffable? Like there's actually a mystical experience scale that you can use for psychedelic experience research. And one of the facets of a mystical experience is it's ineffable. But, I think that the more I do like connect to source on a regular basis, the more that I like work on trying to ground my energy and also like ground my energy into the earth and then also connect upwards to source, the more I feel just harmonious and balanced and at ease. And I think that the more that you can tap into those second, like sort of like the dream states, the hypnagogic states, the psychedelic states, if you choose, there's this sensation of connecting to something greater than you. You know, it's almost like our subconscious is like the part of ourselves that's connected to the higher consciousness of the universe. And it's like, to me, that's my conduit there. So meditation is a big piece of connecting to God. Prayer, devotional practices, manifestation practices. You know, there's a great book called Real Magic I love. And it's written by the scientist who went to my university. I went to the University of Illinois. And it's literally like breaks down magic into its constituent components and describes the history of magic. And like a lot of people look at magic and witchcraft as evil, but I think I think as long as you're using it for good, it can be really generative for your life. There certainly is black magic out there, and it can be used to harm others, and you shouldn't do that. But I think that there's this magical layer of existence a lot of people just aren't connected to. And if you can get connected to it, you can bring things into your life faster, you can manifest faster, you can change your brain faster, you can come up with discoveries faster. And so to me, like, God is a force of creation, you know, and we are all God. Like, we all have God within us. And the biggest sort of like discovery I made through, you know, giving up the religion of Christianity, retaining a lot of the values of Christianity and retaining some of the practices of Christianity, was that Christianity taught me that I had to ask Jesus into my heart in order to be saved. But what spirituality has taught me is that God has always been there. And I just had to reveal it. And that's the beauty, you know, like that's the beauty of spirituality, is realizing that you are God. You have the capacity to create and manifest. You create life. You know, there's this, like when you think about the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, there's you, your parents, and your dead relatives, right? Like, and all of that impacts your psychology. All of that impacts who you become. So like, I think this idea of the Trinity is within each of us as well, you know? And it's just, we have detached from it because we've thought that it's something outside of ourselves, but it's within each of us. And that to me is really powerful, because then you have a lot more agency and autonomy over your life, and you actually have a lot more capacity to change your life when you realize that you have the ability to like bend reality. And more and more and more, when I'm able to do things like this, I'm just like, my mind just gets completely blown into pieces when like synchronicities happen and things come into my life that I've been wishing for and trying to manifest, and then they emerge, and you're just like, it was me getting my consciousness into that state of resonance with what I wanted that brought the thing into my life. And that's the law of attraction coming in, right? So it's like, so the book Real Magic, to go back to that, just to kind of explain how I see this whole thing put together. So you have your vision of your life, and your vision is a bullseye, and it's the thing you're looking at on like in front of you. It's the thing you're heading towards, right? Maybe your vision is to build a company. Maybe your vision is to have some sort of thing happen. Maybe you want a family. Maybe you just want to heal from a disease. That's your vision. It's the thing in the future. Your mission is this path that you're taking from where you are to where you're going. And that's like, you got to keep your eye on the fucking prize if you want to go from point A to point B. So your attention has to be on the bullseye if you're going to hit it. And then your intention is like, imagine you have a bow and arrow and you're trying to hit that bullseye, but your intention is literally the direction of that arrow. And the path of the arrow is the mission. And then when it hits the bullseye, you hit your vision, right? You've created the vision of reality. So emotion is the bow. It's like the energy and motion that powers this entire process. And the thing that I learned through the book, this really great book called Letting Go by David Hawkins, is in order to actualize anything, you have to literally feel all the emotion, and then you have to let go of it. You just have to let go. And you have to let go of all expectation of anything happening and just be. And that was really powerful. I actually was able to manifest a lot more when I started letting go of the desires that I had and like the attachments that I had to things coming into my life. It was just this letting go of this attachment and then holding the resonance of the vibration that I wanted to achieve. So yeah, that's consciousness in a nutshell. And when you take that one picture of consciousness, attention, intention, mission, vision, emotion, letting go, and you have a bunch of people who are pointing their arrows at the same vision. So for example, I'm building a company and I have employees, and you have to get all of your employees to actually see what you're building, because the more people that you can get enrolled in your vision, the more likely it's going to manifest, because there's more power behind it. There's more emotion behind it. There's more energy and motion. And this is part of the reason why Elon Musk is such a powerful person in the world, because he can get millions of people enrolled in his vision of going to Mars or electric cars. You know, like this is something that he has gotten thousands of people, millions of people enrolled in. And it's not surprising that these things start to manifest faster.
What do you think about going to Mars?
I mean, after that episode of Black Mirror, I'm just like, I'm like, no, I have no desire to go there. It seems like psychologically and physically very unsafe and very unlikely that people will come back. But I'm all for other people going there. Like, if other people want to go there and risk their lives for the sake of advancing humanity, go for it. I think that's super cool. Do I think that we're going to go live on Mars? I really doubt it. That's terraforming a whole planet is a bit of a long shot. I don't know. I would like to know more about why aliens are coming here before we go there. So,
Me too.
you know, because like everyone I feel like aliens are on the news like every day. We're all becoming desensitized to the news stories. But I'm like, am I the only person who's like, why the heck are we not figuring this out? Like, what is going on here? Are there aliens? Are there not aliens? Like, come up with a solution, government, please. Like, this seems important. Like, what's going on with that?
I don't know if they will. Maybe it'll be up to us. Maybe it'll be up to. I don't know if they'll come up with a solution. You know, because
so it has to be
maybe
our job?
Maybe the technology is far beyond anything they can handle. You know, with the reports of them shutting down the nuclear facilities many years ago, and you know the things that happen with these UFOs. So I don't know if the government can handle some of these technologies. So what can they do? How long can they hide it? You know,
I mean,
the shit
dude,
with Bob Lazar is wild.
If I could literally like teleport like that, I would be so stoked, because I love traveling. And I just think like teleportation would just greatly enhance my quality of life. And I feel like a lot of these UFO sightings involve these things just magically disappearing in the middle of the sky, right? They're gone. And I'm like, where did they go? What are they doing? How do they do that? Like, did they create like a mini wormhole in the universe? And like, I don't know what they did to do that, but that's cool. And I feel like we should figure this out. It seems important, you know, because then we could get to Mars way faster.
I was going to ask you, what if you could get a wormhole to Mars? Would you go?
No. Why would I want to go to Mars? Like, what am I going to do there? Walk around and be like, cool, dude. If I could come back fast. All right, if I could go
So you're
quickly,
not the person that would go to America.
No, it's like if I could go to Mars and also come back in like a few minutes, totally. But if I have to go to Mars and like hang out there for a while where it's like hot and dry and there's no water to drink, like it's like a frozen lake maybe. Like, I don't know if that sounds
How do you
very
know? It
appealing.
could be like Wakanda, where it's like you don't. When you look at it, it looks like it's all barren, but then there's like a shield, and you just go inside, and you're like, "Holy shit, this is really nice." Maybe the surface is. Not
I read
that
the
bad.
Mars Chronicles as a 6th grader, and I always felt science fiction never painted a particularly exciting picture for space travel. Bad things always happen, you know. Like, I'm safe here on Earth.
So you think?
I don't know. Maybe I'm not. I mean, I guess if I had a chance to teleport there and back, I would definitely do it. But not if I had like a bunch of work to do. Because like, why do I want to go do work on Mars? Like, somebody else can do that. Like,
So what?
I am
what's
not
this
made
work?
to be an
What's this
astronaut.
pressing work that you need to do?
I just don't want to go dig around and be like the Martian in that movie. You know, like I don't want to have to like build. Like, I don't want to have to terraform Mars. That is not a job I want to take care of. Like,
Some people like that.
I'm happy building a garden here. You know, but like
A little different, yeah.
it just seems
But
like so much more work when you have like a spacesuit on. So, like, am I right?
I never thought about the spacesuit being the
Right?
issue, but hey,
I'm not
you
opposed to
do.
hard work. It just seems really hot and like really dry. And in a spacesuit, I feel like I would be suffocated. So I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit of fear of like that feeling of like I can't get out of that suit and like walk around, you know?
Yeah, your chance of survival. I mean, that's the thing though about pioneering and exploration. I just feel like there are some souls out there that want to do that, and props
And
to
they
them.
should.
I'm with you.
They should
Right.
go for it.
And
But
I'm
I
with
would love
you.
to teleport to like Africa and go check out all these countries that I've never seen before. That would be really cool.
I had a friend that just invited me to Cape Town, and I'm like,
Oh my
that would be
God.
cool if it wasn't so far away from me.
It's a really affordable place to live, and you can live a really high quality of life there. Like food is way cheaper, rent is way cheaper. It's like I don't know why I'm not living there. It's so great.
The main reason I don't live there is because I have my dog, and I don't want to leave my dog.
You'd have
so
to
that-
board him and bring him on the plane. Get it like a service dog situation.
I feel like that would be real rough. I mean, it'd be possible, but I don't know. We'll see. I feel pretty good. I like America.
Okay,
I
so
do.
now should we get into like? Okay, sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I'll
go
let you
ahead.
finish that thought.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so one thing we haven't we touched on this earlier in the doc was like the influence of religion on sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we should kind of dig into this more because for me, like my spiritual awakening happened after a 3-day fast where I was very sexually frustrated. Thought I was on a date with a guy and he just was not interested in doing anything. And so I was like, cool, this is not a date. This is a meditation and a fast. Great. And I'm like in the sun in Sonoma and it's beautiful. And then I go work out after a farm to table meal that night. And the next morning we had some fresh eggs and we went to the gym. And I did weightlifting, HIIT training, and sauna. And all these things are written about in my book as increasing mitochondrial biogenesis and increasing mitophagy. So like when you fast, you throw out the batteries in your cells that don't carry a charge. And when you work out, you actually send signals to your cells to make more batteries. And then sauna is like really great for mitochondrial quality control and just great for optimizing your it's basically a mitohormetic stressor, which means it's stress that makes you stronger. So that combined with these really healthy, nourishing whole food meals that were straight from, the land in California, which is one of the perks of California is the food's insanely good. I connected with my community that night. So I'm like doing sunlight, weight training, HIIT training, sauna, fasting, meditation, and sexual frustration, right? This is the thing that led to the spiritual awakening. And I'm in my bed and I'm thinking, wouldn't it be amazing if you had a peak experience as medicine? And instead of going to the doctor and getting SSRIs for depression, you just you were overlooking the ocean and you were coming out of like the best trip of your life with your partner. And I started having a full body involuntary orgasm. And I've heard later that this is also described as Kundalini awakening, where you can have this electricity flowing through your body, in my case, causing convulsions and just mass amount of muscle contraction and just tons of energetic flow of beautiful energy. And I was like, what is happening? Like, how is this happening to me? Like, what is going on? And I told my friends the next day and they were like, oh my God, it sounded like you had a Kundalini awakening. That's so cool. And I was like, wait, I've heard about those. What do those mean? So I went and read a book about them. And I found that in this book, it was like this written about this Indian guy who had a Kundalini awakening and his whole life turned upside down. And he had to start meditating a lot to like handle all the energy changes. And I was like, oh my God, I don't have time for this. This is really scary. I'm going to have my whole life change. And there was the funny thing is I had asked the universe for a taste of enlightenment and I got kicked in the face with the spiritual awakening. And then after that, I had to go and meditate. Like I literally had no choice. I just had to go and meditate. My body was like, you need to meditate. And that started this entire journey of self-discovery and like realization of what I'm really supposed to be doing here on earth, which was not what I thought I was supposed to be doing. I had no idea I was going to be working in sexuality and sexual health. I've always been interested in it, but it was like experience after experience of these profound bliss point experiences of ecstasy through meditation and through just, like, for example, just laying in my bed, having that that experience, that I realized that like, oh my God, like one of the areas that we could be optimizing is our sexual health and our connection of our sexuality to source. And I think that so many people really struggle with sexuality, and they don't see it as this path to divinity. They see it as this like taboo, dark, hidden, kinky subject that has to be like, that's like this thing that you hide from the world. But one of the things that my company is doing is redefining sex therapy and trying to bring sexuality into the light and turn it into a experience of creating actual love between and within people. I really just felt like the science of love was something that I wanted to study. And it's funny because like love is I actually looked up what unconditional love means in terms of all world religions. Because one of my friends had said to me that he didn't think that love could be, he didn't think that men could like unconditionally love each other. He thought that they could have unconditional respect for each other. And I was like, I disagree. I think that, and I was like, well, I disagree because like Jesus was a man. And he was like, that's not the answer. And I was like, okay, so maybe you don't believe in Jesus. But then I asked myself, well, wait, what if I asked ChatGPT about love? And I was like, where does love stand in all the world religions? And every single religion of the world values love in some way. And they all have different interpretations of it, whether it be devotion, compassion, mercy, goodness, kindness, like loving thy neighbor. And like even Wu Wei in Taoism is all about effortlessness, right? And there's just like this really fascinating thing about love, in that it's both tied to our biology, but it's also tied to our spirituality. And I felt like studying love was a way for me to unite both sides of my mind, because I was like, this seems really important to biology. So we evolved love because it helps us it creates proximity between people. When you love someone, you spend more time with them, you touch them, you are vulnerable with them, you cuddle them, you snuggle them, you share information or resources with them. And if you're having romantic love, because there's different versions of love, right? There's familial love, there's friendship love, there's unconditional love, there's agape, which is kind of like, altruistic love, and there's all sorts of different versions of love. But romantic love is definitely designed to get you to reproduce. And if we didn't evolve romantic love, we would not. It's very possible that romantic love and attachment were these evolutionary advantages of early hominids and enabled Homo sapiens to survive over other species, because it actually is more like, it's literally, love is linked to longevity. Because the more you love, the more information and resources you share, the more you're protected. So vasopressin is a part of love, that men are more vasopressin dominant, women are oxytocin dominant. Men are more likely to show that they can protect and defend those that they love. And women are really oxytocin dominant. So we're more likely to nurture life and to actually program life through nurturing. So I studied the science of love from biology. And then I was like, how is it that when I have these profound sexual experiences, I'm able to reach non-dual states of consciousness and like unity consciousness, right? I don't think most people have, I don't know if most people have gotten to there, but I've been able to get to unity consciousness through sexuality and through orgasm and through meditation and through psychedelics. And so when I realized that like sex could be a path to God, I was like, there must be something here, right? There must be something underneath this. And it's like, so now I'm in this place of just figuring out like, how do we rebrand sex and intimacy as lovemaking, right? How do we really not look at sex as this taboo and like problematic area of our lives that we have to shove away and hide, but how do we bring it into the light, and how do we create a sense of connection to source through our sex, and also realize that it's a massively powerful aspect of who we are, and we should respect it for that, and also be more careful with who we sleep with. Because I think that somebody was asking me, how do you teach college students about sex? And I'm like, well, you can teach them about the risks biologically, but you can also teach them about the risks spiritually. You know, if you have sex with the wrong person, it can change the way you operate in the world. It can actually leave connections to these people that you can't shake easily, you know? And so I'm really excited to be like pioneering in sexual health space, because I think it's not looked at enough. And we need more people that are studying it and studying love from a scientific perspective and actually trying to help improve. There's so much dysfunction in the world. And there's so many people who don't fit the criteria for sexual dysfunction, but they don't have great sex. And I think that if you practice sex as is not just this thing that you do with your partner to get pleasure or to reproduce and have babies, but as a way to self-actualize and as a way to deepen your love and as a way to practice love. I think we'd have longer lasting relationships. I think we'd actually see less divorce. But I don't think people look at sexuality, intimacy, and love the same way as they look at optimizing their fitness or their nutrition. And I really want to bring that to the world. This idea that like you can optimize your sex just like you can optimize your other facets of your health.
That's really interesting. I've never heard it put like that. So for you, when you're going through these stages, right? You were talking about how you went through this awakening, this Kundalini. Did you ever have any times where you kind of fell backwards? You know?
For sure, dude. Okay, so isolation is not healthy for anybody. And I spent a fair amount of time alone and isolated while I was building my company. And when I came out of it, I found myself totally self-absorbed and self-obsessed and completely ego oriented. And I was like, oh my God, I just worked so hard on my shadow work and dealing with my ego, and it's back. You know,
back.
It's back. It's like,
yeah.
And I got a lot of really negative feedback from people. And I was really fortunate to have people give me hard feedback, hard truths. And I'd been acting hypocritically in certain ways. And that was really hard to hear. But fortunately, I have a good community and people are willing to tell me the things that are hard to say. And so I'm really grateful to friends in my life that have been able to show with compassion areas that I can improve. And I have a really great family that was able to show me, you're not perfect, girl. You got a lot of work to do still. And so, again, it was like, cool, I've made the spiritual growth. Great, now I have an ego again. Okay, now it's back to spiritual growth. Then you see your ego show up. And the other thing that happens that a lot of people don't realize is like, so sexuality, the moment you start realizing how powerful it is you start to realize, oh my God, like this is literally a tool that I can use to get what I want. And now I never used my sexuality to fundraise. I never used it to take advantage of anybody. I definitely never used it to like harm anybody, but I definitely like maybe dated the wrong person who had just broken up with someone because I was like, well, they're single. I can go date them now. And it was like, I wasn't being respectful to another person's relationship that I thought was over. And so I kind of swooped in and started seeing someone that like really hadn't ended things. Even though he told me he had ended things with his partner, he didn't actually end it. And he didn't inform me of that. So I ended up looking at like the villain in this drama triangle. And it was really because I was like, well, like this guy's single and we have a sexual connection. And like clearly I blew his mind and that's why he wants to be with me. And it was like this realization that there was still, I could have been more aware of the fact that like there was still unfinished business in this person's life. And yet I kind of selfishly was like, I really want to date this person. And it definitely blew up in my face. And I had all these rumors spread about me and it was really pretty negative. That's probably the worst thing that's happened, I'd say. But even that experience made me realize like, if you're acting from your base impulses to like, in this sort of, a lot of people just operate from this worldview that we live in we're still in this like primitive brain with these primitive drives, and you got to fight for mates, and you have to like there's competition, and there's mate guarding, and there's mate poaching, and there's all this sort of evolutionary biology behaviors explainable, and then you realize that like if you really want to be a person who's beyond that, then you have to go beyond your primitive programming, and you have to have higher standards for yourself. And you have to like you have to do things altruistically, even if it ends up being worse for you and your outcome, you know? And that's more of a spiritual approach to things than like the primitive biological programming approach. And that's something that I think has come from, the wisdom of just getting older and realizing that like, I would rather be happy than have drama in my life. So, there's that.
That's hard for people to understand. It's tough sometimes.
I mean,
drama's addicting.
But that's the thing. Like harmony, I realized that like all of the drama experiences that I've had in the last year, which I can think of 5, that's way too much. First of all, like I don't want any drama. And the fact that I had 5 separate episodes of drama in 1 year says that there's still work to be done. and I still have progress to make. And when I realized that there's a drama triangle forming, I just immediately try to diffuse the situation. And I think I've actually made a lot of progress through recognizing these patterns in relationships that was unnecessary for me. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to live in that reality. So I have to change. Because if I change my internal reality, then my external reality will change. So what I've done is just learn to like forgive, learn to apologize, learn to move past pain and issues, learn to admit when I'm wrong, all for the sake of harmony and balance. And the more that I choose that path, the more that my life becomes harmonious and balanced. And so it's literally about recognizing that you are creating your reality at all times. And so you are creating that drama triangle at all times, because if you are participating in it, you are creating it. And so I just have chosen to let go of that, and also to recognize the drivers of that kind of behavior was stress, was overwork, was overextension. And when you are tired and stressed and overextended, you're going to have a shorter fuse. And so you're going to make mistakes more often. You're going to overlook things more easily. And so I've had to dramatically edit my life and really start cutting back on obligations, and really start looking at how can I create the internal conditions of more energy and more balance so that my external world reflects that. And it's been a really beautiful transformation to go through. And in particular, like the last few months has been particularly beautiful and powerful shift in me. And it's been, honestly, it's the best decision I ever made, was just to be like, you are enough, you have enough. You don't need to push yourself to this level of insanity. Like, you also helped that I finished the book and I published it. But like the book was really just, it was just really hard to do book, company, and practice at the same time. It was really tough to do it all and to manage so many. I have a personal brand that I manage too, and it was just too much. And so I realized that was affecting my relationships, and I needed to change my external conditions and my internal conditions to create more harmony in my life.
Wow. I was going to ask you how you do it, but you've nailed it. So actually, I'm curious about something you mentioned earlier now. The theories of everything. I've listened to some theories of everything, and I think they're fascinating. What are some insights that you got from listening to them talk about theories of everything? And, what are your insights on physics when it comes to spirituality? Because if you've heard Eric Weinstein in person give you some friggin' information,
Okay.
then I kind of want to know a little bit,
Basically, there's like a bunch of different theories of everything, right? And there's like different people who have them. So Einstein, Stephen Hawking, Edward Witten, Garrett Lacey, Eric Weinstein,
Mm-hmm.
Lisa Randall, Brian Greene, Lee Smolin, Michio Kaku, and Juan Maldacena are kind of all known for their theories of everything. So I asked ChatGPT to help me understand some common threads through these theories. And it came up with 5 things. The first was this concept of unification. And theories of everything aim to unify all known forces into a single coherent framework. And this includes unifying fundamental forces of nature, such as a strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, electromagnetic force, and gravity, as well as unifying quantum mechanics and general relativity. So that's like sort of baseline, right? Like that's what general physics is trying to do. And then each of these theories relies on math. So mathematics is a second facet of these common threads. And they involve, algebra, topology, geometry, trying to describe the fundamental nature of the universe. And then each of these also has multidimensionality. So they basically all propose that the universe has more than 4 dimensions, up to 11. And that these additional dimensions are necessary to explain behavior of particles and forces that cannot be explained by the 4 dimensions that we experience in our everyday lives. Then there's the fundamental objects. So many of these theories propose the existence of fundamental objects or entities that make up the building blocks of the universe, such as strings, loops, or other geometric shapes. And then the cool thing is the singularities, right? So some of these theories propose the existence of singularities, such as the Big Bang, or the singularities at the center of black holes. And so they don't necessarily address spiritual questions or beliefs, but some people like me may find spiritual significance in the attempt to understand the fundamental nature of the universe and the search for unification and underlying order. So anyway, like I would like to see, I would really like to see like more physicists sit down and think through like how can we try to create a Venn diagram of like all of these 5 things that exist in these theories of everything, and then like what is the sort of corresponding belief, like what does understanding unification, right, mean spiritually? So everyone I know who's ever done an ego death level of psychedelics has all come back saying the same thing, that we are all one, right? This concept of unification is like, so that there's like unity and unification is like it's a common spiritual belief, right? So there's this idea that like if we have a theory of everything, we're going to unify all of these forces. And in a lot of ways, like this concept of unification is like, how can we unify humanity? How can we unify people so that we realize that we are all part of something, right? And then, like math is really cool because you can actually, there's a lot of math in becoming a doctor, right? Like math is great. Now, can we apply math to spirituality? Like, I don't know. Maybe you know more about that than I do.
Yeah, with sacred geometry and like the golden ratio and things
Yeah,
and that type of stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that like Garrett Lisi's theory is so beautiful that I have it on a T-shirt, and it's like this
Wow.
geometric unity. And so I guarantee that like the theory of everything that's going to win is going to have some form of pattern and geometric unity, right? And then this concept of multidimensionality, right? Like obviously when we die, we don't know what happens, but I personally think that the energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed. So I believe that there is more life than just the physical body. And I think that we possibly come back, and that our soul, or whatever it is that we are, this essence of us, isn't finite. Like I just don't believe that. And I think there are other dimensions. I've experienced plenty of supernatural phenomenon. Literally have talked to so many friends who, after a loved one of theirs have died, extraordinarily weird shit has happened to them that only could be related to this other person's ghost still being around. And so like there's got to be other dimensions, and I definitely think that ghosts are real. And I think that it could be explained by some sort of glitch in overlapping cosmic dimensions, perhaps. And then yeah, in terms of fundamental objects, like I don't really know how to explain that perfectly. So I'm just gonna
Hmm.
like leave it at that. I don't really know. Maybe the universe is a fundamental object. And then this concept of singularities, right? Like this is the fascination with black holes. This is the fascination with the beginning and end of time, right? Like there's this idea of the Big Bang, there's the idea of the beginning of life, right? There's this like God decided that there was going to be life, and it was so. I don't know the answer to the beginning or end of life, but I definitely think that this concept of singularity feels pretty fundamental. And that like this whole transition of like material to energetic forms of human existence has to involve some form of singularity. And I don't know what that means, but as you can probably tell, I don't have all the answers. Like
Who does?
certainly have not figured all of this out, but boy, would it be cool to like have more people really looking at these things from a lens of like meaning versus just math. Because I think that the physicist who can really gain the most traction is going to be the one who can actually make this theory actually practical for the average person, right? Like how does this theory of everything change our reality if we have one? Like what's going to emerge from this? How does this change the quality of life of the world? Like what kind of scientific discoveries will it lead to? And I don't know. I've got like a sneaking suspicion that if we figure out this theory of everything, we can figure out free energy. And if we can figure out free energy, then it just collapses the need for capitalism, because there will be just an infinite abundance available for everyone. And I think that would be really cool. Like that's obviously completely hypothetical, but that's something I would love to see. And I really think that there's enough energy in the world. We've got the sun. Like we just got to figure out how to harness it. And so part of me like has this desire to believe that maybe there's a way out of this scarcity mentality, where everybody realizes we are one, and that there's enough to go around for everybody, and that it's just a matter of harnessing the energy of the world to like provide for everyone and solve all these existential threats.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay, so I got two more questions for you.
Sure.
The first one is, we're on Universe Game podcast, so I have to ask you the question. You've done a lot of research as a doctor in the science field. You've done a lot of research in the subjective experience, in the spiritual-esque fields. And as someone who strives to unify them, do you see how maybe is there any evidence that you've been given or that you see of reality itself being a video game?
I mean, it's weird, right? Because part of me thinks this whole simulation theory was popularized by a hot tub conversation that my friend had with, some people in Silicon Valley that kind of brought it to the surface. I remember first seeing singularity theory at a thing called the Singularity Summit, which became Singularity University. And I remember everybody was going apeshit over this idea that everything is a simulation. All that being said, is this all just a video game? I mean, it's funny. I've lived so many lives in one life. So I definitely resonate with this idea of the video game of our lives, like maybe as a metaphor. I mean, if you actually study, mitochondrial health, you realize that you are constantly filling up your energy capacity, which are like the bars of your energy before you die. And like, that your character in the video game isn't going to be very good at its job if it's running on low energy, right? And so I've always loved the video game analogy to help people understand how building metabolic health can literally give you more capacity to live way better lives. Like, people are always like, when I explain all the things that I did at the beginning of this talk, you're probably like, what the fuck? How does this girl do this? And don't get me wrong, I certainly hit a wall last year and realized that like there's a limit to my capacity to be able to be functional. And like, obviously there's a point where you're just like achieving for the sake of achieving. And you're like, really, why am I doing this? But I have to say that like spending 10 years on optimizing my health has led to so much more energy capacity that I feel like a superhero. Like, I feel like I'm in a video game and I know how to get more bars. And I think if everybody saw optimizing health as a path for greater self-actualization and being able to do more in less time and actually have more powers, they would all want it. But the thing is, most people just look at optimizing metabolic health as like a path to not get sick. But I look at it as a path to like achieve higher, capacities. And, I was literally chronically fatigued in like my early 30s. And I am now more energized than someone in their 20s most days. And so it's like, I think that we could be in a video game, but like, who's playing? I feel like I'm playing the video game of my life and I'm watching myself like experience this. I'm like literally like, I'm like the programmer of the game, and I'm also like in the game, and I'm also playing the game. So like, that's the only way I can describe my existence. I think a lot of people feel like they're in someone else's video game, and that's probably true. And sadly, that's the reality most people are going to take, because most people don't have purpose or like direction, which is sad and frankly like heartbreaking. But whether we are in someone else's simulation, it remains to be determined. I feel very I don't know, I feel very like cosmically connected to something much greater than me, and it doesn't feel true that I am in someone's video game manifestation of reality. So that's my gut feeling. But that being said, like, I think the concept of like your life being a video game is totally cool if you see it as you get to write it, you get to program it, you get to play it, and you get to be the one in it.
And there it is. Interesting. Okay, so last question then. How let's do a hypothetical here. Let's say that you were talking so much hype about Cape Town. Let's just say that you decided, I'm gonna move to Cape Town. Damn. And then I'm gonna decide, okay, I just want to pursue this spiritual path. I'm just gonna find myself a nice hilltop and I'm
Yep.
going to build a cabin there and I'm just not going to talk to anyone ever again and I'm just going to pursue that path.
Yep.
Let's just say, for hypothetical sake, that that's actually what you decide to do right after this podcast. And you're like, oh shit, this is the last time I'm going to get to talk to humanity. So if there was one last message that you had for humanity, that just off the top of the head, you didn't know this was coming. So what would you tell people about really anything that's coming to you?
It sounds so cliche. Like the answer I'm gonna come up with is so cliche. But like literally, God is love is the most true solution to almost all of our problems. And I just really feel like you can find divinity in love any day of the week, and when you connect to that feeling of love and connection to source, you realize that you are love, and that the purpose of like our biological existence is to be love and to love in order to live, in order to survive and thrive and endure until we pass. And the only thing you can really leave behind is the memory of yourself and others' hearts, right? And so this is why I've kind of dedicated my life to try to figure out like how can I be love. And one of my main goals as my like next path is like editing half the crap I'm doing in my life out so that I can replace that space with just meditating and doing metta meditations and qigong and like really practicing love every day. Because to me, I will be far more impactful in the world if I can operate from that higher state of consciousness on a regular basis. And the only reason I fall back into these lower consciousness states is because of stress and overwork. And so it's, to me, like the answer is like you can always return to that place. You can always return to that place of connection to God, connection to source as love. And that's always been within you because we are programmed to love. This is fundamental to being human. And there's never a situation where more love is not needed. There's a great book on Aikido called The Art of Peace. And it's literally about how love is the solution to conflict resolution. And that the truest warriors are using love to their advantage. And they're not actually attacking or aggressing. They're actually using the ability to deflect another person's energy, using that person's energy against them. And so it's like fascinating when you really start reading about, warriorship and how much it's really tied to love. It's really profound because it really shifts your entire worldview around peace and war, And one of my favorite goddesses is the goddess Inanna or Ishtar from ancient Sumerian times. And she was the goddess of love and war. And a lot of people would look at this goddess and say, that's paradox. You can't be a goddess of love and war. You can only be one or the other. And what I love about her is that she's an example of the complexities of existence, right? As much as I want to believe that we can have world peace 24/7, 7 days a week, and we can go back to the 90s and stay there forever, I know that that's not the nature of existence. And so how do we learn to love in the midst of war? How do we learn to cultivate love within ourselves? Because I think that's what Jesus taught. And I think that's what almost every religion strives to teach people. And so do you need religion for teaching love? No, but you need to understand it and you need to study it still in order to cultivate it within yourself. And so, yeah, that's what I would leave people with. Have you read the book Power versus Force? I'm sure you have.
Yes, I've read like 6 of Dr. Hawkins' books.
Yeah. So like you get it. Like if anyone out there is listening and is just curious where to begin the spiritual path, David Hawkins' books are so good because he just had this near-death experience he like died and came back to life and basically came back completely changed. Huh?
In a blizzard, right?
Yeah. So he comes back to life and he's like, he literally healed people with love. By just being in that state of unconditional love. And I find that when I bring that to my clients and I bring to my meetings the sense of complete and unconditional love and understanding, I get better outcomes. And so like that's the real medicine, like love is embodied medicine and there's real science to it. And there's real spiritual reasons behind it. And there's a reason why it's part of every religion in the world. And maybe this theory of everything stuff actually could prove love. Like maybe it can prove that like love is somehow part of the universe. And its design of creation. I don't know.
It's possible.
It's possible.
It's definitely possible. But all right. Well, thanks for coming on today. Where can people find you, and what do you got going on right now?
Yeah, follow me on Instagram at drmolly.co, drmolly.co, and that's the same website, www.drmolly.co. I'm also on Twitter at Molly Maloof MD, and LinkedIn, same thing, at Molly Maloof MD. My book's called The Spark Factor. My course is called Your Health Span Journey. And I'm building the company Adamo Bioscience, ADAMO. It's going to be launched, our first cohort's going to be launched this year. So if you're interested in learning more about that, drop me a line on Instagram and stay tuned for the website launch this summer.
All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Universe the Game. If you did, go ahead and slap the shit out of that like button and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, I really appreciate you, partner. It helps the algorithms, and this thing gets sent to more people, which is great and helpful for getting this information out there. So I appreciate you for doing that. Other than that, check out today's sponsors, which is my Patreon, Universe the Game. We got a lot going on there. Link is in the description. Other than that, let me know what you thought of the episode down below. What'd you think of Dr. Molly? What'd you think of the conversation? Let me know down in the comments. Other than that, we will see you in another episode of Universe the Game, which we've got plenty of episodes of. So if you like this one, you may like another episode. You might want to check it out. And we'll see you in the next episode. And until then, peace.